Okay, go.
Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Unios Insights Live. I'm back here in Perth at the HQ, and we're going to be going through a little bit about kind of how lighting plays a role in interior design, a little bit of lighting design stuff, and how it kind of affects our mood and all those kinds of bits and pieces as well. So as always, if you do kind of have to step out and you can't catch the full episode, jump over onto YouTube at Unios Light, and you can catch the rest of the episode there. You can also grab any of the other episodes as well. So we're going to go through, I know you've already seen this showroom in the first episode, but we're going to go through some of the same areas, but yeah, just change it up on what we're going to talk about. So if you follow me, we're going to go through into the tech showroom. We're going to start kind of with my opinions on the importance of light, right? So let's go this way. We're going to come back into the tech showroom this time. Alrighty, so I really, truly believe, and that, look, I am massively biased when it comes to lighting, but that lighting is one of the most important parts when it comes to interior design. Okay, not only because you literally can't see the rest of it at night, but you know, just how it actually plays with the space, how it interacts with the space, and all those kinds of bits and pieces. So I want everyone to have a bit of a think about at the moment, right? We're gonna take a couple of seconds, and we're gonna have it think about your favorite place. Okay, so whether that is your favorite restaurant, maybe it's a public space, maybe it's your home, maybe it's your living room, and you don't like another room in your house. You know, think about something right now. So I'm going to give you a couple of seconds to think about that space, right? Hopefully it's your favorite place, right? So it should come to your mind pretty quickly. Now, think about the lighting in that space, right? So I want you to think of that. So everyone's ticking it over, everyone's thinking. Is it good? Now, I know good is kind of a bit weird term, but you know, how does the lighting go? Is it glary? Is it super bright? Is it moody? Is it shadowy? Is it accent stuff? You know, all those kinds of bits and pieces. What is the light doing in your favorite place? All right. So just think about that for a sec. Now this is really key, right? Because lighting, we sometimes don't notice it all the time. We only notice sometimes when it's bad, right? Back when I was kind of an electrician, before I started this whole lighting journey, you know, 10, 15 years ago, it was kind of, you didn't really notice it unless it really stood out and it was really, really bad, okay? So now I want you to picture some bad lighting. Now, what kind of spaces are they? Maybe it's your desk at your office. Maybe it's a hospital room. Maybe it's, you know, something like that, right? Or a place that you don't like being. Now, picture that lighting, okay? And what's the difference? What's the difference between your favorite kind of places and the places that you don't like to visit, or you're uncomfortable in those places? Now, it's not all to do with artificial lighting, okay? Natural light plays a massive, massive role. And maybe your favorite place is somewhere you enjoy in the evening. Maybe it's not somewhere during the day, so natural light's kind of taken off the table. So we do have to rely on this a lot. And I hope you've got that in mind now, because we're going to go through kind of the rest of a bit of the story, but just think about that difference. And that's how, thinking about that difference actively when we're entering spaces, especially for everyone in the construction and design industry, that's how we change the way that world views lighting, okay? That's how we do it. We think about what's good, what's poor, and that we want to be comfortable and we want to actually engage with this super, super creative medium that is light. All right, so where do we start when we're kind of thinking about lighting and we've got a space like this? Now, I think it's kind of lit all right. I don't know, kind of decent. I did it, so don't judge it too harshly. But what are the kind of factors that I put in here? Now, I'm kind of missing one of the main factors, but we'll go through the three. So we have kind of three, you can call them layers, I suppose. We've got the ambient light, right? The task light and our accent light. okay? I don't have much ambient light in here, but what is ambient light? It's that general illumination, right? Maybe in an office, it's that general illumination for safety. Maybe we're walking down a footpath outside, you know, all those kinds of things. It's those general kind of light that gets you to a level where you can actually see what's going on, right? And if done right, and if done to a certain, you know, level, it can be really, really impactful for the rest of the layers as well. So what's the next layer? What did I say? I said task lighting. So we need to think about what people are actually doing in the space. Are they there to relax? Are they there to enjoy a meal? Are they there to be productive and work and all those kinds of bits and pieces? Are they trying to do brain surgery, right? You know, pretty different levels of kind of focus and all those kinds of bits and pieces. So let's think about that. The task. Now, I usually kind of skip ambient when I'm doing any sort of, and I come back to it, right? I usually think about the task first. What are we trying to achieve in there? And if it's an office, you know, maybe we light the desk. Maybe we light a vertical behind a screen so we can make sure that someone's comfortable in their workstation. But what is the task lighting? And then we've got the third one, which was accent, right? So there's lots of amazing features in our interior design, whether it's joinery, whether it's a pot plant, whether it's artwork that's standing behind Brent at the moment. That one might not come up on the phone too well, but accenting is all the things of interest, right? All the things of interest in our life. We want to be able to try and accent. Is it the joinery with all our favorite books on there? Is it a family portrait that's hanging on the wall? Is it, you know, anything on these kinds of a coffee table, all that kind of stuff? That's the things of interest. That's the thing that's, you know, maybe interior designers, maybe even architects are spending, you know, putting a lot of detail in, spending a lot of time. Maybe it's got a little bit extra budget to actually get that onto a project. And if we're not lighting it, well, it's a little bit of a waste, isn't it? Right? If we've put so much effort into these things and we're not accent lighting, you know, it can kind of go to waste, right? So they're the kind of three. I like to do task first, then I do accent. Lighting designers might kind of not like that, but then I come and I fill in the gaps with the ambient light in at the end, okay? That's just the way I do it. I'm sure there's better ways to do it. But that's how I feel I get the best result to create a mood that I enjoy, right? Which is really important to me. So what we're kind of going to go through now is how do we actually, we've got those three layers, but how do we use those three layers, right? So we need to be able to actually use them. You know, we can always just put a little narrow beam spot on something and we can do all these little tweaks and stuff like that. But how do we actually use it? So we're going to walk over to this main area here and we're going to go through one of the factors that kind of creates a bit of a mood and stuff as well, which is color temperature, right? So I'm just going to turn some lights on here. So color temperature is definitely part of creating kind of mood and things like that, right? So you've obviously got color, RGBW, you know, actual red, green, blue, all those kinds of ones. And, you know, they have a bit of a purpose, but when we're talking about white light, we have a heap of different options, right? LEDs can kind of do, you know, anything from the kind of 1,000, 1,500, 1,800, all the way up to your kind of 6,500 kelvins, which is your really blue, kind of white blue light. And how do those affect our mood, or how do those set us up for a task? Okay, so I've got 2,700 here, which is usually related to kind of relaxing, right? So if you're doing a restaurant, if you were doing a day spa, if you were doing outdoor lighting, that's a whole other topic that I could talk for hours and hours on about how to reduce blue light outside. But we're talking about our mood internally at the moment. And yeah, 270 is that more relaxing, right? It allows kind of a bit of melatonin to enter the body. You can start getting those relaxing chemicals that starts to happen. 3K, I would say, just based on sales of Unios, 3K is the most popular color that we do. Residentially, for sure, 3K I think is the best option, just because you're usually using the lights throughout the day and the evening, so you're trying to get that balance You probably don't want 4K in the evenings. You probably don't want 2.7 during the day if you do have a lot of natural light coming into the space, because it is going to conflict with that, really amazing natural light that's going to come into the space. So 3K is kind of that kind of workhorse color temperature. And then when we go up to like 4K and beyond, for instance, now at the Unios office, we kind of run through color temperatures throughout the day in a circadian rhythm kind of pattern. And we get to about 4,500 in the middle of the day, which I think is really cool. That creates a mood of kind of focus, and it matches the natural daylight, so it's kind of helping the whole human-centric side of lighting as well. And that's what 4K is kind of there for. But yeah, like I said, don't chuck it outside at night, all those kinds of things. So what we're going to also have a look at while we're still in this area, actually, is if we are talking about accent and ambient, how do we actually achieve that? Right now, I know this may be super basic for some of the people on the call, on the webinar, but we have beam angles and stuff, right? We have a lot of where we actually put light. Do we just have to put light in the ceiling and use downlights? No. Let's we can do better than that a lot of the time. So let's just have a quick look at what this is going to look like. Right. So what I've done is I've just used a really large fitting, so it's got a really big aperture. It's got a really wide beam angle, and this is considered the ambient light, right? Yes, it might be a little bit bright for this space, but this is what I'm talking about when I talk about ambient light. So just really wide, maybe it's really uniform, maybe it is kind of a lower intensity to your task lighting and your accent lighting to create a little bit of a hierarchy between things of interest. Walking around, you don't really need too much. You can probably get by with 20 lux, right? But we tend to really go over and above, and say you're designing an office and we need 320 for our task lighting, and then it just becomes 320 ambient. Just everywhere, right? So creating a hierarchy is really, really important between those three. So that's what that ambient light is. So if I used 3 fittings, I've got them right next to each other. I just changed the fitting. I've just changed the beam angle. It takes you to a different place, right? Mentally, it takes you to a different place. These 3 lights now, we've got a 12-degree beam angle. You could really easily picture kind of 3 tables there in a restaurant or something like that under there. Whereas before we were at the IKEA cafeteria, now we're maybe at a high-end restaurant or something like that, right? So just by changing the kind of accent lighting, changing from ambient to accent has completely changed the mood, okay? So that's what I wanted to show you. So beam angles and lighting placement is a really good way. I'm going to show you a little bit more lighting placement stuff in our concept showroom, which we're going to go to now, but it's pretty easy to see on the floor. I'll go back to the large one now. That ambient light versus that accent. Now you can really get a good indication of what that actually means. Cool. Let's go over to the other side, and we'll have a bit of a look at the bedroom and the bathroom. We're going to go this way. Cool. So I know this might be a little bit basic for some people on the webinar, but I really want to get this point across, right? Changing someone's opinion about lighting, one person at a time. Alrighty. So now we're in the bedroom. So now we're going to talk about kind of placement. Obviously, we've talked about guiding the light, right? We're going to talk about kind of placement and intensity, right? Do we want everything just coming from overhead, or can we change it up? So if we look at a very popular style of light, I personally don't like them, and I don't sell them, but let's have a look at this. I just need to change my network quickly. Alrighty, so this one here. So we've got 4 downlights over a bedroom, right? How does that kind of, I don't know, make us feel? It doesn't really do anything, right? You walk into the space, yes, you might like the color palette, you might like the furniture, you might like all these kinds of things, but lighting is that component that's going to really lift it over the edge. And just using 4 downlights. Now I can change the downlights into probably a better case scenario. Like I could change them into something like this, for instance. You know, I'm reducing the glare, I'm making it a little bit more comfortable. I am probably changing the mood slightly, but you know, we're still lighting from overhead. It's still coming from the same way. The intensity feels less, but you know, the lumen output is around the same. So it's about that feeling rather than just what we're seeing on a data sheet or what we're seeing in a calculation. But if I go something like, let's go this one here. Now, I don't know how that's coming up on the camera, the indirect side of things, but let's just take all the lights out of the ceiling, right? We'll just focus on this area where the kind of wardrobe and desk is. Take the lights out of the ceiling, have some wall lights, have it reflecting on the wall. So it's coming from the vertical plane because it's bouncing off. It's coming from above us as well. It's probably not the best that you can see on the camera. We've introduced kind of extra areas. So we've got accent lighting. I don't have a task light over the bench or anything like that, but it's just about changing the way we're kind of placing the lights around. And this is really important. You can't just, well, everyone does, and a lot of people do, but just going in and putting grids of downlights and all those kinds of things can sometimes get, you're kind of stripping away that mood, right? Stripping it away, and it's not really gonna give people that extra experience. Yes, the interiors might be amazing, but it's giving it that extra edge. Let's go over to the bathroom now, and we'll have a quick look at just something I've done in here. Just going to turn this off, and we're just going to look at just lighting it from completely above. So over here. So it's all lit up just from downlights. Okay. You know, there's lights over the bath, which, yes, someone's probably put it there because they're going to use the bath. They've picked it as task lighting, right? But what's the task when you're having a bath? Unless you're 7 years old, the task in a bath is to relax. So probably don't want lights kind of over your head while you're looking up at the ceiling, right? So you want to get rid of that. And this is just kind of considered ambient lighting, right? This is being placed in as task lighting also, because there's a task that happens at the vanity. I need to shave, I need to put makeup on, those kinds of things. What these do is actually make it even worse, right? They create more shadow and more of those things. And just nothing here at the moment is creating kind of any sort of mood. So again, I don't know how this is going to come up on the camera, but if you ever get over to Perth, I'll show you around. If we go this way, so we've taken everything from up top and we put it into the ground. Now, I'm not saying go drill holes in your slab. I'm just saying, think about how you can switch up the placement and you can create a little bit better of a space, right? So the placement is super, super, super important, and it's going to change everything. Maybe we can stand under the shower, we can look directly up and we don't have a light blinding us. Maybe we are in the bath and now we've just got soft light glowing around the bottom of the bath as well. I don't have much task lighting, but then we actually think about that differently and we layer it. So we have the ambient lighting like this, and then maybe we have some accent lighting if I wanted to introduce something for the plant or the towel rack. And we could also have, this is going to be really bright on the camera, but you know, having those separate switches for task lighting, that's actually going to throw light onto your face. So it's all about thinking in those 3 layers as much as possible. You know, probably ambient, task, accent should be the way to go. But if you're like me, it's task, accent, ambient. Cool. That's kind of all the kind of I'm going to really show you today. So we've been going for about 20 minutes now. I'm going to leave the last 10 minutes to answer some questions. So let's go back downstairs into some natural light, which is the best type of life. And so hopefully we've got a heap of questions today. I know this is a very kind of opinion-based one today, but yeah, I think it serves a really good purpose, and hopefully, you know, people can kind of match what I'm kind of thinking and my opinions about stuff. So, alrighty. So I'm looking at the screen now, and it does look like we've got a couple of questions up already. And we've just lost the gimbal as well, so it gets a little bit shaky. That's why the few questions that we've got up here. So the first question I've got is going to read it over the top. Dining area place my family gather around the most. So what kind of lighting placement and intensity would you recommend here to create a comfortable environment during there together? Wow, so that's a pretty powerful question. I mean, what you want, if you want to create a comfortable environment, I'll start with the last bit first, right? If it is that place where everyone kind of sits and you're eating, but then you're also hanging out afterwards and things like that, you want to use multiple layers, right? So you want to be able to have something that can light up the table, can be well lit, but then maybe you have a pendant that also has an indirect option, right? So you have it down when you're eating, and then when things are kind of calming down and you're doing whatever you're doing after, you're actually doing that task, if we can say eating's the task. Maybe it's got an indirect section on the back, right? And you can throw it up into the ceiling and you create a really comfortable environment after. You're reducing glare, you're having a soft light, maybe you have a wall light that comes on at the same time as that. And you actually set up these scenes inside your house to actually make it, like that restaurant, like that resort, like that hotel area. And I think that's the best way to do that kind of stuff. But yeah, let me know if I'm way off base. So the next one was, what kind of fitting would be best to highlight artworks? Okay, so we're talking about accent lighting now, right? So anything to do with accent lighting, let's go back and we'll talk about, there's two different types of kind of ways that we can actually get light out of a fitting, right? So we can use a thing called a reflector, okay? There's actually three. We can use a thing called a reflector, which actually reflects the light out of, all these little tiny squares inside a reflector. And it just throws the light out, doesn't have a lot of control, and you end up with kind of scalloping, you end up with a really wide spread. So it's not really the best for accenting, but a lot of people actually end up with that fitting because it's cost effective, and they ended up with it. And you actually get a poor result over the top of your artwork, and especially if some is super sentimental and super important to you, it can actually be a really bad result. So the next kind of one, I'll talk about the best one last. The other one is just straight up diffused light. You have no control over that whatsoever. So usually you're talking beam angles of upwards of 100, 110 degrees, sometimes even 180 degrees. And yeah, that's not very good for accenting. So you need to pick a light that's actually specific for accenting. So I would say anything that's got a lens-based system to actually distribute the light out of the fitting, and then kind of muck around with some beam angles and get it to actually go on to what you need it to go on, depending on the size. There is one kind of level even further where you can use a lens and you can frame it up. You might have saw that when Brent was showing the artwork when we were upstairs. So that's kind of the ultimate way, potentially, but sometimes it creates too big of a contrast. Sometimes you need some backlight ambience behind the image to actually make it as good as possible. All right, question 3. What are the considerations for lighting in a study room or a living room? I mean, study room and living room, I think, are two completely different rooms when it comes to what you're actually trying to do. So I would say study would be, very task focused. I would definitely look at the task lighting first, and then how to create ambience that would layer over the top. And then with a living room, it's I would say a bit mix of ambient and accent. Having those layers is really cool because, ambient might be when you're, going through and vacuuming and stuff like that, but accent might be what you're going to actually use when you're enjoying, a book, or you're watching TV, or you're playing a game, or anything like that. So yeah, definitely two different types. One's very task focused and one's more relaxed focused. So question number 4, we've got a few today. I'm planning to design my home soon. How important or what effect do you think indirect lighting has? Indirect lighting is everything, in my opinion. If I was to design my home from scratch, I would delete every single downlight out of it and try to do, which is a bit counterintuitive because that's the main product I kind of sell most days, but indirect lighting is so important. So indirect wall lights, indirect lighting through, linear strip that kind of grazes walls, all those kinds of things, wall washing, getting verticals illuminated in a home rather than worrying about your horizontal plane, which is your floor, because we don't walk around looking at the floor. Everything of interest in our home is on the vertical plane, whether it's artwork, whether it's a bookshelf, whether it's a person, right? They stand on the vertical plane, even if they're sitting down, their face is there, and that's what you want to be connecting with. So indirect lighting, so important. My favorite, obviously, type, zero glare, all those kinds of things. Hopefully that answered your question. And what type of lighting is important for a workplace? Can I say indirect again? So obviously we do have task lighting that's required for a workplace, but I think we're a little bit skewed on what we think that the task lighting is meant to be there to do. I think we're very addicted to lighting the horizontal plane when it comes to workplaces. I know personally, I look at a computer screen most of the day when I'm not talking to clients, and that computer screen is on the vertical. So making sure that we're actually having stuff on the vertical plane to match the screens, whether it's behind screens, all those kinds of things. Like I do draw a bit when I am on my desk, and I have to look at the keyboard to type. So 𝐥𝐬𝐲𝐢𝐶, I haven't quite mastered that one yet. But yeah, that's what I think is the most important type, is vertical illumination. And then we kind of worry about kind of getting that ambient light over the workstations and stuff to consider that task lighting. I know the standard tells us different, but I'll have a debate with someone over the standards. If you want to come over and we can have a debate. So we've got one more. Oh no, that's it. No, I've already done that one. That's it. It's 5 questions. Got about 3 minutes up our sleeves. So again, thank you so much for joining. This episode will be up on @UniosLight on our YouTube channel as well. And I will see you next month for Topic Unknown. Thank you so much for joining us.